Welcome everybody. My name is Pete Peterson. I'm the CEO of Merit 2.0. And we've got a terrific presentation for today. It's a security and authentication webinar about passwords. And passwords may be the single most frustrating part of a computer user's experience. And so we're going to tell you what not to do. And your frustration level may go up for a little bit, but during the presentation, we're not only going to share tips with you on what you should do, but ways that you can become even more secure and have fun doing it. So the webinar, I'll be joined today by Gabe Miller, who's a certified information security manager and the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer here at Merit 2.0, and Jerry Smith, our security project manager. We're going to go through a couple things. Number one, what is a predictable credential? A phrase that most of us weren't familiar with not too long ago. How secure is your password? And really helpful and fun tips to create a strong password. Real quick, Merit 2.0, founded by Randy Spangler in 1982. And now 40 years later, we have 18 employees. We're a Microsoft partner. Our clients are throughout the Hampton Roads region, all the way up to New York City, down to North Carolina, and into the Microsoft cloud. We protect over 2,500 PCs and servers, and we're really focused on compliance and security, and these webinars are just one of those proofs to that. Cool thing is, we send 17,500 client reports every single month. Our clients say that we're better for three primary reasons. Number one, we connect you with your coworkers and your clients. Number two, we empower you by teaching you how to use your technology. Number three, we protect you. And so today's webinar is really both empower and protect. And so as we said at the very beginning, we're going to talk about this funny phrase, predictable credentials. And let me bring in Gabe Miller. Gabe, how do you explain a predictable credential to an end user?
A predictable credential is something in your life that's related to you. So it could be your birthday, it could be your kids, it could be your parents' names. It's something that's associated with you in some way, shape, or form that may have been leaked on the dark web during a data compromise.
Okay, and so why is that important? What can happen because of that?
Yeah, exactly. Hackers determine a pattern, and they can try to easily guess your default password. So if they know that your password been cracked, that you're using your date of birth, they'll go ahead and try that against other sites. They'll also look at your kids' names or parents' names and use those in password generation and password tries in order to try to predict what you might be thinking. So the more information that's leaked, the more predictable your passwords become.
Okay, so predictable credentials, things about me that are predictable to bad actors out on the dark web.
Yep.
All right, well, if that sounds scary, this chart looks scary. What does password cracking speed mean?
So this is an actual password chart of the speed it takes a commodity-based computer, something you can get at Best Buy or Costco, to crack your password based on length and complexity. So if you look at a password length of 10, and you go to a website and they're like, oh, you need a number, uppercase, lowercase, letter, and a symbol. What they're trying to do is force you down into the green section to say, hey, if someone gets your password hash, it's going to take them 5 years potentially to crack that password. So those restrictions in place on websites are trying to force you down into the 7 quadrillion years that it will take to try to crack your password in order to make sure that that your lock is safe for their website.
Okay, so that sounds like it's going to be really complex and hard to remember.
Could be.
Okay, all right. So here's a real life example that you have come up with. A large company with 2,355 employees. So how many of them, like right out of the gate, fail even the most basic complex password test?
Yeah, you can see that 8 characters or less, 40% of the user account population was using an instantly hackable password.
So 8 characters or less, almost instantly hacked.
Yep, under 8 hours.
Okay.
They were using privileged accounts, sysdba, which is a database administrator account, which generally holds all of your sensitive information, financial or PII. 9 of those accounts were using less than 8 characters. So again, less than 8 hours cracked. They also found 600 plus accounts that were already using known cracked passwords. So this comes into a password reuse issue where known users were using cracked passwords. Um, Accounts are using duplicate passwords, right? So either a user is assigned 2 accounts for some reason, and they were using the same password, or there were multiple different accounts that were using the same password. Again, there's quite a few others that were using a standard format, company and then a number, like company 2022 or merit 2022, or adding a dash in there to make it slightly longer. And with that too, there was also 200 accounts that were using an old password hash. It's called
Yeah.
a LAN manager hash, and those can be instantly cracked.
So
The
if a
big num-
company, if a big company with 2,355 employees can't figure this out, how can a small business? Is there any scale here?
There is, and it comes down to educating the user population on how to craft passwords correctly. If you look at the risk exposure here, you'll see that the number of accounts is actually higher than the total number of employees, which is really bad, right? So we need to be able to reduce those numbers down to fractions of a percentage based on the total employee population to know that users are using correct password creation templates.
Okay. So this sounds easy then. This is what we're getting to. Do this. So password length of 16 or more characters.
That's tough.
Yeah, it sounds like I have trouble remembering how to spell Pete. Right. Now it's Pete times 4.
Yep.
And numbers, upper, lower characters. So all those special keys that we talk about. I do want to focus on MFA both real quick now, and we'll come back to it at the end. What does MFA stand for, Gabe?
It's multi-factor authentication, and specifically with passwords, you may notice it on your Apple or Android device. When you go to a website and you're entering in a username, Apple may come up and say, "Hey, how about using this complex password?" And the MFA portion of that is that when you go back to that site again for a second time, you either have to use Face ID or your fingerprint in order for Apple to be able to put that password back in for you at that site. So that's the MFA portion. It's a secondary means of authentication that says, hey, I really am me, and I'm not some guy who just stole my password off the internet and is trying to get in.
Yeah. Point number 4, real quick. If you can avoid it, it's important not to have a work email as a username. Why?
First off, you don't own it. So if you were to leave the company, you can't take that email with you, and you would have to contact your previous employer in order to be able to gain access to the account that was associated with it. And 2, your work business, generally you're using communications with other companies. So a hacker that compromises one of those other companies could easily glean your email information and use that as your primary login information for other sites.
I gotcha. I'll remind everybody that the webinar itself, the slides will be available from the Merit 2.0 website. But one of the things we'll come back to is phrases become easy to remember, but there's a couple typos there, and we'll come back to that. So if that's what we should do, Gabe, what are the things that we should not do? What do we avoid?
Yeah, don't use the same password. Password reuse is a big issue. If you're basing your security on the, you're on the security of another site. So let's say if Walmart's site was compromised and you reuse that username and password on your banking site, if Walmart was compromised, now your banking site is also compromised. So very quickly you can have a large exposure of personal or financial information just because of one site that was compromised. So don't use the same password.
Okay, and username, if you can avoid it, changing username.
That's correct.
But this is one of the ones that our clients ask us all the time. They're like, doesn't adding the year change my password and make it harder to hack?
No, because it's predictable. Hackers are going to try to stuff the year, current year, previous year, your birthday, because they know that information, onto the end of the password and see if you've or tried to be sneaky enough to change your password.
So these are three of the harder things: number 1, number 3, and number 4. You can't use the same password, so we're going to help. We're going to come up with a really good password, but I can only use it at one site. I can't just add the year when I have to change my password, and now you're telling me you don't want the browser to store my password. Why is that?
No, because the password stored in your browser is like storing it in an open book. You really don't have any security around it. Now, granted, keychain, whether it's through Android or Apple, are different. So that is actually a secure mechanism. But to store it in Chrome or Edge or anything else without any sort of secondary or multi-factor authentication associated with it in order to gain access to it, it's just like leaving it on your desk open for anyone.
Yeah, and so there we come back to it again, multi-factor authentication.
Yep.
So password strength testing. So this looks very complicated to me.
Right. Well, it's my name with a hack.
It's your name with, okay, so it's your name with some substitutes, right?
You got it.
And it's 8 characters. So we saw at the very beginning on our chart that this should take a long time to solve, right?
Yep. At least 8 hours.
But it took a quarter of a second?
Correct. Because it's predictable. It's a proper name. That
Okay.
8-hour assumption, remember it's less than 8 hours, would assume that potentially you're not using a predictable word or a name.
Yeah.
So it would go through and try all of the low-hanging fruit, dictionary attack, proper names attack, in order to figure out a password first.
So in this case, you got lowercase, uppercase, number, symbols, and it took less than a second.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So this looks like Gabriel again.
Right.
And we just talked about it.
Yep,
and
end of the year.
And a year, and you predated it. It's not even this year. Nope. And an exclamation point.
Sure.
13 characters.
Yep.
So this should take centuries to crack.
Nope. And that's because of the predictable nature of what I'm doing when I create the password. I'm saying, okay, I'm still going to use my name. Okay, it's weak, but I'm going to add a year on the end of it.
Yeah.
And the computing power is so great that it doesn't really slow it down to find out what my password is.
That's crazy. So, all right, this looks complex.
Totally.
This is a whole bunch of gibberish.
Yeah, good luck remembering that, right?
Yeah, I could never do it. 20 characters. So A, I couldn't remember it. B, it's 20 characters. So that's off the charts.
Right.
That you just showed us at the beginning, right?
Yep.
What's up with this?
4 hours. And this comes down to the predictable nature. Computers are very good at substituting, data for what they think we are trying to do. So if you actually look at the exclamation point, @ pound, that's actually shift 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0 minus.
Yeah.
Plus, so it's actually the top row plus my name.
It's the whole top row plus your name. That seems like it'd be complex, Gabe. It's 20 characters.
It is, but it's predictable.
All right. Well, all right. So what about this?
This is a very good password.
These are 4 words plus a year.
Right.
So this looks like it could be hacked in no time.
Dictionary words, you bet.
27 characters. Now, does the period count as a special character?
Yes.
All right. So it does have special characters, uppercase, lowercase, and 4 numbers.
Yep. Yep. 100 trillion years.
That's crazy, the difference between 20 characters on the left that seem like gibberish and easy to remember words and a number on the right that a first grader could remember.
Yep. Yep. And this is because this isn't predictable for a computer. Like a computer's like, why would you put PC servers, cloud, since in 1982 together? Like,
well, because Merit's been in business since 1982 with PC servers and a cloud.
That's right. And if I was going after Merit, I probably would use combinations of such to go after the passwords in Merit. But for the most part, it has no idea.
Okay. So speaking of Merit,
yep.
Merit is the best at IT. There's no numbers.
Nope.
You just said that the period, counts as a special character. So this is 23 characters.
Yep.
But they're all words, and they're all easy to spell, easy to remember.
Yep.
How can that be so hard to crack?
Yeah, once you start moving into combinations of words, like as in a sentence, you know, there's so much nuance, right? It's not predictable what you're going to say next. The programs that actually try to guess it are better at doing substitutions of special characters and, you know, changes or integrations of different letters and numbers than it would be to actually string a number of words together to guess. So
okay. So this therefore makes it even longer.
Yep.
An extra period and the number 1982.
Yep.
And it's not even Mr. Spock could have solved this one.
Right, but the thing is, it's really easy for you to remember, right? Merit is the best at IT 1982. So it's something that you could easily regenerate or enter into a system when challenged for it to get in, but it's extremely complex for someone to try to just crack. So it's a great password.
Okay. So network security requirements. You've said at least what?
14 characters, 1 lowercase, 1 upper. Yep, one number and 1 symbol. Now this is generally what you'll find in an organization when they say you have a particular password policy and it has to be complex and you have to go in and enter it and you can never get it right. Right? He always comes back and says password doesn't meet complexity requirements. So you're always trying to get it in over again. So this is the same 14 characters, upper, lower, numbers, and symbols.
So if we did numbers only 14, it's 41 minutes to crack, right? That's in gold here. If we did lowercase letters only, it's 51 years. That's good. If we did upper and lower letters, it's 800,000 years.
Yep.
And so this looks like we should be somewhere between 200 million years, 9 million and 200 million years, right?
Yeah, long time.
Long time. What happened?
Yeah, so if you look at this is a 14 character password, right? It's not dots. I hid it just to show this.
Okay.
It's lowercase, it's uppercase, it has numbers, it has symbols, right? So it hits all of those 5 things.
Yeah.
But yet only takes 0.5 seconds to crack this password.
This seems completely counterintuitive.
It is. And this comes down to the predictability portion of it, right? So if we look at the password, it's an exclamation point, which is a shift 1. The word password, which we've probably ever used once before or such, or been given a password with that in it. The word love, which is very common in everyone's passwords that have been used prior, and another exclamation point. So technically, we have met the policy. We have said, okay, we have 14 characters in length, 1 lower, 1 upper, 1 number, 1 symbol. It should be 200 million years to crack. But oh wait, because of the way we're predictable in our creation of this password, it only takes a half a second to crack.
Gabe, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yep.
So
right,
so
easy to remember, right? That's what we want for a password.
but this looks like 14 characters, but it's not good.
Nope, it's based on dictionary words.
Okay. And so the same thing on the right, same easy to remember, same 14 characters. Why is it harder on the right?
Because you misspelled easy.
It's very helpful that I don't spell well.
Right, and this is a strategy. This is a very good strategy for password creation. If you're a poor speller, you probably inherently have a better password than everyone else because of the fact that it's not a dictionary word. So it's going to have to try to brute force that easy portion of the password to try to figure it out.
I gotcha. All right, and so we follow that same theory, and easy to remember has now become .easy, .to, .remember.
Right.
And now we're 81 years. That's good, right?
Yeah, that's a good password. Yep, and it's easy to remember. But if you misspell and drop a letter here or there, even though you can remember what it is because you know that you're going to misspell easy wrong and you're going to forget to add the R in remember, if you will, you make it extremely more complex to crack at that point.
So fewer characters, and yet exponentially more hard for the bad guys to crack.
You got it.
All right. So you had this phrase at the very beginning, spelled a little differently. Phrases become easy to remember with some periods thrown in.
You got it.
But this is 30 characters, and it's 46 million years. That seems like it's about as good as you could get.
Right. Yep. That phrase probably isn't part of Shakespeare, so it's tough for a computer to put that together. So that's why it takes 46 million years. But if you're a poor speller, you got a D in spelling all through grade school.
Yeah.
You actually have a much harder password to crack than the person who can spell correctly.
And so that's what you've got on the lower right. It's fewer characters. It's 100 trillion years.
Got it.
All right. Not even the fastest supercomputers in the world are going to crack that in under a couple billion.
They're just going to move on. They're not even going to try.
Okay. And really, that's what the goal is. The goal is to be complex enough that the bad guys move on, easy enough that you remember it. And so these tips that you've shared with us, I think, Gabe, are really, really helpful. What are the top things? How would you summarize this before we get to questions? What are the top things to remember?
Even if you think you're being creative with your password, you're probably not. Go to passwordmonster.com. It's a free site. They don't record your password. I know there's always that saying that if I try a password, are they going to record it? No, they're not going to record it. And go ahead and build a routine or a system that allows you to, craft in a strong, non-predictable password. Spell stuff, add weird things. Only you should know your password, so don't be embarrassed by it. Go ahead and create one that's unique to you and something you're going to remember easily.
So we're the IT partner. We're never going to ask for a password.
Nope.
Not going to be disclosed. You're not even telling your doctor what your password is.
Yep.
So we've got a couple minutes left. We can have a quick wrap up. Jerry, any questions?
Yeah, we do have some questions, but before I throw those out, Pete, I just wanted to say, this was a great presentation by Gabe, but, we have another webinar that kind of ties into this, and that no matter how strong you make the passwords, if you, the end user, give it away like a phishing email, then it doesn't matter. All of this is kind of wasted. So make sure that you think before you type.
Yeah. Great point.
A couple of these questions you may have covered already, but just to bring it up again so that we can reiterate it. We have one, are you able to test your password strength online?
Yes. Password Monster is a great site. I recommend it. I use it all the time.
Very good.
Yeah.
Do you have what you would recommend as a good minimum length for passwords at various sites?
It really comes down to the capabilities of the site themselves, right? So generally when you're creating a new password, they'll say, hey, the minimum has to be this, but there may also be a maximum. And try to lean towards the side of the maximum side of that password. So it may be 32 characters, maybe 64.
You don't want to take the shortcut on that?
Uh, Not really. I mean, you should make it easy. Like for banking, like let's just say this. A great password for banking would be like, I want $1 million in my account today, which is a really easy password to remember, and thrown in with a period here or there. It would be incredibly difficult to hack, but it's something you want and something that you're going to remember every time you go into your bank account. So it'd be very easy for you to just be like, I want $1 million in my account today. Log in. So so err on the size of err on the side of a longer password.
Okay.
Right.
Knowing that we have these more complicated password phrases, how often do you recommend that we make changes to our passwords at these sites?
Generally, I'd say maybe once a year. It comes down to how frequent the password is how frequently you're using that intelligence behind creating your password. If they're totally random, then you can definitely go longer than that. But if there's generally a pattern to it, like some people use like their area code and then maybe a sibling's name that's associated with it, and then some sort of text afterward. If you're using a predictable portion of your password, you may want to change it once a year.
Yeah.
But the other caveat to that is if the site is using 2FA or MFA, then I don't see a need to change your password at that point.
Okay.
And so this is the third time we've talked about MFA. The strongest advice we can give is every chance you have a multi-factor authentication, two-factor authentication. If it's an opt-in option, then you should opt in. Is that right?
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
It'll stop 99% of all password attacks. You bet. MFA will. So it's totally great.
I think we've got time for one more question. If you really shouldn't use a browser to store your passwords, what do you recommend is the best way to try to remember or store your passwords?
There are a number of utilities and providers that can you can use for that service. I use one. It's called KeePass, KeePass, but it's a local, right? It's just on my machine. So if I'm away from my machine, I don't have access to my passwords. But it's not a huge deal. Because a lot of the stuff that I do, whether it's through apps on the phone or on the iPad, is all either thumbprint or Face ID. So I'm disconnected from those passwords. But there are other ones like 1Password, which is a cloud-based system that can provide you to store your passwords. They actually have integration pieces with browsers. So if you buy their service, and I'm not endorsing any of these, but don't have stock in any of them. But they'll actually install a little software piece that will be in place of the browser password saving. So you're always accessing and saving your password through a secured site. And generally that will have to have 2FA enabled or MFA enabled. So your access to your passwords are doubly secure.
Yeah. Hey, I know we're coming up on the half hour, so we'll wrap it up, Gabe. As part of your role as an information security officer and the empowerment, the ongoing end user cybersecurity training, phenomenal. Everybody from today's presentation, everybody at Merit's always available for any questions. Today we heard Gabe Miller, Chief Information Security Officer, email and cell phone available here on the screen. Jerry Smith, who runs the special projects under the security division. Email and phone number on the screen. And I'm Pete Peterson, CEO of Merit. Really appreciate everybody paying attention to this, and we really appreciate all of you. So stay cyber safe, and we'll see you at the next webinar. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.